You're listening to Health Coach Conversations, a podcast where our conversations help health coaches all around the world to level up our businesses and to get more clients. Hello and welcome. I am visiting with Heather Eck today. She's a multimedia abstract artist and writer. She's an intuitive artist and painter, and Heather interprets people, places, and experiences through color, a condition known as, I hope I say this right, synesthesia. Like an enormous box of crayons, her gift operates by categorizing through intricate but specific shades of color. While the condition enables her to experience color, she responds to these encounters with people, things, emotions, and spaces by understanding the particular shade of experience that a person dwells in. She uses her gift to detect the most healing color for them to remedy their wounds. Guided by the chakra system and inspired by spirituality and the mysteries of the universe, Heather transforms these vibrant energies into captivating paintings that uplift and inspire and ultimately heal. Each canvas becomes a symphony of color and emotion, a visual representation of the unseen connections that weave through our lives. Heather's work is more than an art. It's a medium of healing, a testament to the profound influence of color in our well-being. Hi, Heather.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Well, this is one of my favorite topics because in my past life, I was an interior designer. And so I've done a lot of papers and even programs on color theory.
Awesome. I saw that about you and I thought, oh, that's so cool. She's an artist too.
Yeah. And you know what? I had a friend of mine take me to the side about 2 years ago and try to teach me intuitive painting.
Oh,
and that
yeah.
drove me nuts. I mean, I love looking at it, but it drove me nuts to do it. It's like, where's the perspective and where's the, but it drove because I couldn't be happy with what I did. And while she was doing hers, I loved everything that she put on there. But what I did, I still have the canvas here that I'm intent to paint white over it and start over.
Isn't that funny? I think when you are, I sometimes, this happens to me too. There are pieces that I'll paint that I can't stand. I'm like, oh, I hate the way that this turned out. Somebody else will go, I love that. Don't paint over that. That's gorgeous. And I'm like, why do we dislike what we create sometimes when it comes through in the most authentic way? I feel like there's something about that where we dislike an aspect of ourselves or we don't like looking at a side of ourselves because it came from us, right? So it must be good, but also there's this weird thing that happens where
if you get 20 years later and you look at it and you think, what did I complain about? That was really good. It's just like your picture, what was I complaining about? I was young and
right. Exactly.
Okay, so I have some questions for you. How did your journey as a visual artist intersect with your interest in the chakra system and spirituality, leading to you to create a focus on healing and wellness energies?
Mm-hmm.
What made you think to pull it all together?
Well, I think it's funny how if you kind of look back over the course of your life, all the things that you've experienced or learned or gone through are preparing you for where you are today. And if you can have that perspective to go back and look at it, you can see where all along the path you were being given tools or experiences or meeting people that took you to where you were. So when I look back at like my childhood, even, I was always really curious about the mysteries of the universe and the things that you couldn't see and sort of what was, those aspects of life where you were like, what is this about? Or where does this come from? And I remember in college being very curious about meditation and studying the chakras and kind of looking into what all of that meant. And then it wasn't until years and years and years later where I was working with a spiritual teacher and still do. She's amazing. And she said to me, you're struggling, right? Like you're looking for something. What are you looking for? Because at the time I was getting every certification under the sun and every possible thing. I was just chasing letters after my name. And she said, what did you like to do when you were little? And I honestly couldn't remember. And she said it was art, right? And then I looked back and I went, oh my gosh, it was. I was always sketching and drawing and taking art classes. And I minored in art in college. And as soon as she said that my gift was creative expression, it was like a light bulb went off. And I thought, oh my gosh, I get it, right? Like all along, color and art and music and all these creative ventures had been around me. And I just wasn't as zeroed in on it as I could have been. And then once I had that awareness moment, it was like, oh, these things go together. And then as I started to paint and I started to interact with people and feel and sense and see color around them, then I went, oh, I get it. That color is connected to this. And that's what this means. And this is how it can support you. And this is how it can, help you move through your life with more intention and with more healing and with balance. And so that's sort of where they all sort of came together for me in a way that, the light bulb went off and I said, oh. And then you have your duh moment, duh. All signs were pointing this way all along, right?
Do you teach art then?
I
Art
do
and healing?
teach a little bit. Yeah. I just actually last week, you're going to laugh because we were just talking about this. I taught an intuitive painting workshop.
And how
And
did
it was,
everybody do?
you know what? They were so open hearted about it and so curious about what they were painting. And so we started out by journaling. What is it that you want to let go of this year? And I had them write it on their canvas and then they
That's
painted
such a
over
good
it.
idea. That gives you
It was
something to aim
awesome.
for.
Yeah. And we did the same for what do you want to create? And so they were so patient with themselves as they were creating something. And they'd say, I don't know why I picked this color, but I did. And I was like, that's okay. I would tell them, here's what that color might mean for you, or here's what that symbol might mean for you. And then they were like, oh, this is great. And so they created these really beautiful, a lot of them abstract pieces completely intuitively. And it went better than I imagined that it would. So it was really cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Can you explain how, okay, and I struggled with this when I was introducing you to synesthesia. Is that how you say that?
Yeah,
Oh,
you got
good.
it.
Okay. So explain how synesthesia influences your artistic process and how it helps you perceive and convey the healing properties of the colors in the paintings.
Yeah. So synesthesia is something that's, I think, becoming more, I wouldn't say mainstream, but I think people are becoming more familiar with it. There's only about 4% of the population that experience synesthesia, and there are many, many different forms of it. I have a form where when I meet someone or, when I taste or smell something, I see a color in my mind's eye. And so when I meet somebody, if I, focus and allow myself to tune in, I'll experience a color for them or a shape or a form. And so that helps me kind of go, okay, well, this person sort of dwells in a blue space. Like, what does blue mean? Well, I associate blue with the throat and how you express yourself or communicate. And so when I experience somebody through a color, sort of tells me where they're dwelling in their chakra system, in their spiritual, emotional, or physical body. And then when I'm doing a portrait for them, I call it a portrait because it's really like, in essence, where they're dwelling in this moment. And then the painting sort of shows me messages and symbols and colors that they're reflecting back. And so when I'm working on a portrait for somebody, I sort of look at where do you dwell? And then what color will be supportive for you as you move through your life. It's like a snapshot in time. And so when I'm talking to somebody or a client about the colors that I see and what colors will be sort of prescriptive for them, what I'm helping them understand is how they can intentionally use color for wellness. So if you're somebody who wants to be more creative and you want to create something in the world, then maybe you want to work with orange because orange is uplifting and inspiring and helps you connect to your creativity and your relationship to yourself and others that might make you more creative overall. So that's sort of how the two go together for me. Not all synesthetes work that way. Everybody's different, but that's how I connect to what I see and then what the chakra system is and then how that comes together in my art.
That's very interesting. You know what, I kind of see, I never associated it, but I'll associate people with colors too.
Cool.
Um, but it might be because I just know about the colors. I don't know if I did that as a child. Did you do that as a child?
I don't remember doing that as a child, but I remember really paying attention to color. Like I always wanted to change the colors of my bedroom. And I was always that weird kid who would be like, oh, if we're watching a movie, everybody in that scene is wearing blue. I just always paid attention to things like that
Well,
when
I
everybody else
decide
was
whether I
wearing.
like something or not by the color. It's just, if it's a certain color, and I won't say which colors I hate because I don't want to influence anybody that loves that color. But, well, I will say one, I love gray on graphic design, but when I was doing that intuitive art, my colors turned gray in a few places. And I thought, I do not want that. So that, you might have to start over for that reason too.
Yeah.
So synesthesia, if we define that, it would be, what would you say the exact definition of that is?
So it's sort of like a crossing of the senses. It's like if you were to hear the days of the week, a lot of people just hear Monday through Friday, but a synesthete might hear Monday as red or Tuesday as
Hmm.
blue.
Okay,
Um,
I'm that.
yeah. Does that happen to you?
Yeah, it does.
Oh,
Yeah.
you probably need to look into synesthesia. There's lots of different forms of it, but a lot of artists are synesthetes. And if you have that background in design, you probably intuitively are already drawing on how you connect to color and shape and form, all of
Yeah.
that. You
That's
probably
funny.
have a form of it.
Yeah, that's cool. Now I've got a word for it. So your artwork, oh, this is interesting because before we talked, I don't know a ton about the chakras, and I've looked at the chakras. I've talked to Lisa Fraley. I don't know who she is, but she's an attorney that goes by the chakras too.
No way.
Yeah, and so I looked up this morning what religion thought of the chakras, but this one you said that you draw a lot of inspiration from the Bible and
Mhm.
spirituality. How do these themes affect your creative process and the messages that you aim to convey with your art?
Mhm. So I've always been a very spiritual person. I was like that little kid who, at the library was pulling out books on the Dead Sea Scrolls at like 10 years old. Like I've just always had this insatiable curiosity to understand more about the bigger world that we live in and all these questions I think about why we're here and what the purpose of our lives is and these just great big mysteries about God and the universe and all these things and I'm one of those unique people where I'm not religious, but I'm deeply spiritual. And I sort of believe in a lot of things, but I connect color and chakras with the Bible and think there's a lot of symbolism and a lot of meaning that can overlap there. And so I don't see one as exclusive of the other. And spirituality is a big part of my work, especially when I'm sitting down to do a portrait for somebody. Prayer and meditation is always a part of that. And my ask is that I just be a channel through which the messages are coming through. And I always ask that they be delivered from the highest and best place because I never want to make anyone feel uncomfortable or bad about themselves or anything. I always want the messages behind my work to convey love and acceptance and, respect for people. So I take a lot of inspiration from spirituality. I'm a new student of the Bible and studying what the Bible says. And again, not from a religious perspective, but from a what does it say? What does it actually say? And drawing on inspiration from that and using that as part of my bigger work. So a lot of the themes of my work have a sort of biblical overtones. A piece that I'm working on now is called How Great Thou Art. And I was thinking about how generous and loving God is. God, the God of my understanding, could be whatever someone else wants to call a higher power or source or spirit, but really trying to let the energy of that loving kindness come through. And so there's a lot of gold in this piece because gold is about abundance and not just abundance financially, but abundance through good health and strong relationships and great love. And so, those spiritual themes, those biblical themes of God's goodness, all sort of, kind of funnel through me onto the canvas. And then I hope that people connect to that energy, that they're drawn to something that makes them go, oh, I just feel good when I look at that, or I feel love when I look at that. And so that's just an aspect of the work that I am really trying to understand and really trying to explore through what I create.
That gave me goosebumps. That's really cool.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You have a picture behind you. Can you tell us about that?
This one here,
There's a lot of pretty color in there.
there is a lot of color in there. So that's a painting. I think it's called La Playa, and it is an alcohol ink painting. And it has almost every color of the chakra system in it, including gold. And I love to create bright, vibrant pieces. If you probably know this too from your background. We look at like home trends right now. A lot of our homes are skewing towards whites and grays, and we're sort of removing a lot of color from our homes. But when I make art, I like to incorporate as much color as possible because our bodies and our spirits need vibrant, healing color. So that's one of those pieces that really pops.
Yeah, one of the good things about having, the white backgrounds is that you can put any colors in there,
That's true.
And then you can change your mind in 5 years and put all new colors in there and still keep what you had.
That's so true. I love that too. I like a lot of white because it feels so clean and open, but I love to just pop color on there, like rich jewel tones and that sort of thing, just to, uplift you.
Yeah, you go through different phases in your life too. I think I can remember a lot of architects did white or off white that I worked with, or engineers, and you'd go to their houses and there would be no color besides off white and maybe a little bit of black here and there, and you would think, oh my gosh, it's kind of sterile like the hospitals. They must be doing a lot of, community work or work in the hospitals instead, but they start getting, you can only live with that, I think, for so long. And you start throwing a lot of color in there.
Yeah.
But you can.
You can. And it's so interesting too. We go through trends with fashion and all kinds of things, but also with color. Like Pantone releases their color of the year every year. And it's always interesting for me, as somebody who reads color, to go, oh, that's interesting. This year's color is peach. Well, that's about the sacral chakra. That's about creativity and our relationships. But it's a very soft color, which means that isn't as rich or as vibrant as it could be. So there's maybe a lack of those feelings. And then a couple of years ago was yellow and gray, which was interesting. So there's all kinds of really unique ways to look at the trends and color and how we are collectively using color.
Yeah, that peach color this year, Amanda sent me a note. That's everybody that's listening to this knows who Amanda is. She does everything for us. But she sent me a note and she says, you won't believe what the color is this year. She says, you've got to look at it. It was the color from the 80s. Those peaches and greens were in all the houses.
That is so true. I had the same thought. I was like, oh, here we go with the soft peach and the soft greens. And I bet you will move more towards like more neon in a little bit, like adding some of those funky colors. And even when you look at fashion right now, all of the clothes that I wore when I was like 16 are coming back into fashion again. And
my granddaughter is wearing the clothes I was wearing when I was her age.
It's so interesting to watch that happen too. I just am fascinated by it.
Yeah, it goes and it's cyclical. I think the way that they give you enough time to get rid of all those colors and then bring it back again. That was how turquoise was too.
Oh yeah. I know, you just got to hold on to everything, right? Because it'll come back in 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, but the nice thing about art is you put it in there and it stays forever. It's always good in art, no matter what. Who would change an art piece? Well, I guess some people would change an art piece because of colors, but usually you'll do things so that you can keep the art pieces that you love.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of times people will try to decorate around a piece of art, but I always say, like, just collect the art that you're drawn to and it will fit in wherever you want to put it because you love it and you love to see it.
And it's so funny. I have a lot of art, and people that come in, it's kind of like my books. They used to say you'd be able to judge a person by their art or by by their books, but you can't tell with me because it's all over the place. But it's funny. I'll have people, I've got a couple of pieces that the kids say it looks like they've got broken necks. It's these women with these long necks. It's really cool. And they don't like it. And I've got this one Picasso. It's just a print that's in the kitchen, and everybody that comes in here loves that piece. And it's just very simple. It looks like a kindergartner drew it, but it's got a lot of color and it's happy and it's free, so. Which leads me to my next question. Can you share a little bit about your philosophy behind using art as a tool for self-improvement and healing, and maybe even self-care? We just released a self-care program. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about art as self-care too.
Yeah, I think absolutely art is self-care. I think that, there are studies that show when you do anything with your hands for like 15 minutes or more, your cortisol levels go down instantly. So I think we're made to create in whatever way it feels good to you, whether writing or sewing or painting or whatever creative outlet you have is intended to help calm the body down. And I think we were talking earlier about during the pandemic, everybody started to move towards these, art opportunities because I think we all needed that. And I think the busyness of our lives prohibited that in a lot of ways. And we slowed down and we started to actually reconnect to our sense of identity and our sense of creativity, which was beautiful. I think that's the silver lining there for sure. I think we can use art to express ourselves and to get out emotions that we didn't even know were there. When I talked about that class I taught last week, that was all about what do you want to let go of? The act of writing is so powerful. Commits it to paper, and then you're consciously moving through the thought process of going, I no longer want this in my life. I want to let it go. And the same with creating. We talk about manifestation or this idea of putting something, speaking something to make it true. I think the same is true for art, and it's powerful. And I think when when we talked about intuitive art, right? When you're trying to create something, being able to let go and sort of get out of your own way and let whatever's coming through come through instead of trying to choke it a little bit and go, but I want it to look like this. I think we get into a zone, the space of creativity genius, right? Where we just sort of surrender. And then you step back and go, oh God, I don't even remember making that. And then I think we feel inspired and uplifted. So I think it's a wonderful wellness tool. And I think if you can build out time, maybe 5 minutes a day, just to journal or doodle or paint, maybe you don't want to get out your paints, but you just get out colored pencils or even markers and write something, art with a lowercase a, it does a lot for the mind, body, and the spirit.
I went to the Art Institute and I learned how to use markers. Those are fun. I mean, they're kind of like watercolors, but you have a little bit more control. And then I figured out how to do the same thing on Photoshop. So you didn't even have to have the paint all over the place. But that was cool. When COVID started, we created a coloring book with health tips and sent those to nursing homes with crayons and then my markers with the colors that I didn't like. I gave away all the colors that I didn't like But, that was good for them because it gave them a creative release. It's almost like meditation when you're doing that.
For sure. Yeah. I have a picture behind me of my grandmother. She was in a nursing home towards the end of her life, and she's painting clothespins in it. And she loved to do crafts while she was there. Cool. She was very creative anyway. But I think art is so important in those places because it, like you said, it's meditative. It calms you down and it gets you into a different place. And it's really incredible. I think when you look at the benefit of art in our lives, it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We really ought to spend more time doing it. My Amanda, who everybody knows but you'll have to get introduced to her after this.
Yeah.
She, every week she has a friend or friends over and they try a new form of art.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. That's really cool. You have to make the time then, and you learn new things, and you learn what you like and she'll put something up on Facebook that she did, and she'll say, "This is awful." And everybody will say, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool."
I
Then you
love
look
that
at it
idea.
a little bit differently too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah. So the unseen and the mysterious universe are significant aspects of your artistic inspiration. And I think that's so cool. I'd love to see it. It's a lot of your artwork on your website?
Yes.
Oh, good. We've got that information too. So how do these intangible elements influence the emotions and energies that you infuse into your paintings? And I know
Hmm.
you've already told us that one story. So
Yeah. I think as artists, we try to put out onto whatever canvas we're working with what we feel inside. And it's hard to find fact in that, right? Like it's hard to find what is something that you can prove in that. And I think for me personally, it's all about my relationship to a higher power and to source energy. And I have to always try to get out of my own way when it comes to creating. Because if I do try to control it too much, it just doesn't turn out the right way. And I feel so frustrated. And so I'm always sort of looking for that place where I feel more in the zone, where I am not in control of what's happening, and I'm intuitively letting whatever lands on that substrate to be what it is without judging it or questioning it. And a lot of times I won't even know what is happening until I'm done. And then I'll have to take a step back and go, okay, well, that's interesting. What is that? And then kind of look at,
where'd that come from?
yeah, to sort of study it.
That's a lot deeper question. How do you get to that space? I mean, if you've been working on the computer all day and you've been dealing with family problems and you've been reading books and you've been doing this, how do you go from that to a space where you can just let it all out? I mean, just let it go.
Yeah. I think that part of it is the actual letting go, right? I was working on a couple of new pieces last week, and I found myself wanting to really control what it looked like. And I found myself thinking, oh, I want this to look like another artist or to be inspired by what they do. And then all of a sudden something sort of stopped me and I went, but that's not who you are. Just let go. And then different brushstrokes started to come out and different colors started to be mixed. And I had to again try to move myself out of that. That is my constant battle. I am my biggest roadblock. Me. I am my biggest, stopper on that. So I really have to find a place where I can get quiet and ask for God to come through and to then just get out of my own way. But I can feel it switch when I am trying to control versus when I'm in the place of letting go. And then again, those pieces that I just made last week, my friend Amy, she said to me, "You posted those and a lot of people liked them and you commented on it. I wasn't sure what people would think of these." And she said, "Why did you say that?" And I said, "I don't know. I guess I just wasn't sure what people would think of them." And she said, "Well, why does it matter?"
Yeah. That would be my question, except for it does. You are affected by other people's comments because that's awful personal.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that's the piece of our I think that's the piece of me that wants to be accepted and loved
Mhm.
and to be everybody's cup of tea. And I think as artists, we are trying to both express ourselves outwardly, but also create something commercially. And that's always the struggle, right? Like when you're looking for something that's going to be widely accepted, I think it chokes your creativity sometimes. And so those pieces that I made, I think were just an aspect of me that came out, right? Uh, but there was also this part of me deep within that wanted it to be something that people liked. And that's where I think artists really, I think all of us, we get ourselves into trouble because we're behaving in a way where we want people to like us instead of the way that is most authentic to us.
You know, I had a big problem with that because if I drew something and then painted it or used markers or whatever, it would take me forever to get it the way that I wanted it to be. And you can't make money spending a long time on something. You just can't. And so I got to the point where I decided I was just going to have to do art for me. And when I needed to draw something for a customer so that they'd see what I meant, I would scribble it out and it would get done in 3 seconds instead of 3 days, or
Yeah.
3 weeks. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. How does that work for you? Or is it different for you selling your art than if you're doing it for yourself or just for the pure enjoyment of it?
Very much so. I just had a couple of experiences with some commissions over the holidays. And, if it were just me painting, again, my friend Amy, she asked me to do a pet portrait for a friend of hers. And I was so relieved to do this portrait because I had creative freedom. I got to pick the colors, I got to pick the style, and I done in like a half an hour. And I was
That's
like,
cool.
oh, that was great, but then the hours, that I toiled over these other commissions where I felt like I wasn't able to just let go. There's a big difference and I can feel it. I think a lot of us can feel it. I think there's a story about Picasso where somebody comes up to him and says, "Can you draw something on a napkin for me?" And he does very quickly. And he says, "That'll be X amount of dollars." And the lady says, "But it took you 15 minutes." And he was like, "Yeah, but it took me 15 years to be able to get to that point." Right. So I think we sort of know when something feels good because it comes naturally. It's like innate in us. And we're like, "Oh, that was great. I enjoyed that so much," versus like the struggle.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're struggling with it, it's not fun anymore.
No, it's exhausting. And I think that's the really good thing to pay attention to is sort of how you feel as you're doing something. Does it feel easy and expansive, or does it feel tight and restrictive? And then you kind of know this is for me, right? It feels open and easy and I enjoy it. Not that everything will come easily, but it's a feeling I think that we have when you're like, and then you're done.
Well, I think that's, Matisse. You look at his stuff and you think, some of his stuff was like really intricate, but it was really simple. But, I think that's a case where he did a lot with color and he did a lot with shape and he did very little with detail, that we could see in little pieces, like you see in something like Monet. But I think that's interesting. And I think that, probably he was pretty happy with what he did.
Yeah. He probably didn't toil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So could you describe a particular powerful or transformative experience where someone else's interaction with your art led to a positive shift in their well-being?
I have a couple of examples, but I had somebody that I worked with a while ago, and we were talking about what color she kept wearing to the office. It was like the color yellow every week at least. And I started to pick up on it because she had never worn that color before. And I thought, there's something happening here. I feel like when yellow shows up in your life, it's representing something is changing about your identity or how you relate to yourself or other people. So I asked her about it, and she said, "How did you know that?" She was going through something where she was thinking about changing careers or changing what have you. And so now whenever I see her, she's like, "What does this color mean for me?" Like, why am I wearing this color for you? So I think just the very act of, developing an awareness around colors that we wear or that we put in our homes is really transformative because you suddenly have this perspective shift on it. But I've also had experiences where I had a photographer in the studio one time and I picked up a big piece to turn around and show her. And the instant that she saw it, she started to cry. And it was really surprising. I've had people cry when they've looked at my work before, or if I tell them what the meaning is behind it. But for her, it was like visceral. She had a visceral reaction to it. And I always find that interesting with people because I do think that my work will speak to the spirit of the person, and that they're sort of like commissions for people who I haven't met yet. Because I think that there's a piece for everybody. So that's been really interesting for me too. But my friend Amy, who I mentioned, she has had, we call her the largest private collector in America because she really does have a lot of my work. And she was one of the people that early on when I said, "Oh, I'm gonna do a portrait of what I see for you in terms of color," that she has gotten many of those throughout the time. And one piece that I created for her almost looked like it had the shape of a dog in it. And she had lost two dogs a couple of years before, and she hadn't adopted a new dog yet. And I did that portrait for her, I want to say about 3 months before this new dog came into her life. But she was going through something where she needed to feel more open hearted about inviting another pet into her world. And then lo and behold, here he comes. And it's funny when you look at him and then you look at the portrait, they have similar profiles. So she's got a lot of pieces that are very transformative for her and that are just really powerful examples of where you are in your life and what happens when you open your heart to receive.
You see a lot of struggling artists through history, the ones that had a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol. And do you think that is part of the whole thing? I mean, were they maybe too open? Is there anybody that shouldn't be doing art?
That's a good question. I feel like we can all do art. I feel like we all should do art. I think that, when we use drug and alcohol, I think we're trying to numb an aspect of ourselves or a feeling that we have. And, those feelings don't go away when you stop drinking. It's just that you've sort of tamped them down quite a bit. I think as artists, sometimes you feel a bit more creative when you're drinking, but I also think that sometimes it can hinder your connection. It can stop that connection to God. So
that's one of those cases where you think you're doing beautiful art. And then when you're sober, you look at it and it's, oh no.
The next day you're like, oh. No, I don't paint if I've had anything to drink. And I try not to paint within 24 hours of that too, just to keep a clear channel.
We've gone 5 minutes over the time that you agreed to be on this call. So I'm gonna stop here. But you have a free monthly calendar where you send out free digital calendar with one of your newest paintings and a complimentary color and chakra guide.
That's right. Yeah.
And then you've got a Facebook community. Are all the people in that community interested in color or art or both? Or
yeah,
good?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I will ask them, what's your intention for the week ahead? What's your one word intention? And then I'll tell them what color will support them that week too, which is always
I'm going to join that group.
Yeah, come on in.
Yeah. And so what's your URL?
Oh, heathereck.com.
And then you also have something that you want to give to the listeners, right?
Right. Yep.
And that's your spiritual portrait experience. So we'll have that link. I'm not going to, it's Heather X Studios, I know now, but we'll put that underneath the podcast so everybody can just click on that link too.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here today. This is one of my favorite subjects, and I was looking forward to talking to you this morning.
Oh, me too. I'm so happy to meet you. And I enjoyed listening to your podcast too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you liked what you heard, please give us a 5-star rating or review on iTunes.